Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrip, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. And I think as dads, we genuinely desire to be good. We desire to be better. I think as parents collectively, we have this desire to be good. We mean well in what we do. It wasn't that long ago, we were having some really sleepless nights with the new baby, and my wife got an idea. She felt inspired. She thought that maybe the reason the baby wasn't sleeping was because she kicks so much. And let me tell you, she did. She would literally just lay there and just put her feet straight up in the air and just be in an L shape. It was ridiculous, but that was her thing. So my wife found this weighted sleep sack that you put on the baby, and it's supposed to make them feel as if they're still up against you in a sense. They feel some pressure against them, and it's supposed to help them calm and relax, and it's supposed to mitigate or eliminate all of the kicking and the arm flailing and the stuff that was waking our baby up. So we got it, and we put her in it, but she still kicked, and she still flailed her arms. And what we ultimately did was put her through like baby weight training, because since she had the resistance and she kept doing it, she only got stronger. And so by the time we took it off of her because it just wasn't working for a little season, she had super kicks. It was ridiculous. It's probably why she rolled over earlier than she was supposed to, because we bulked her up a little bit. We had good intentions. And this is what I want to focus on today. We often, as fathers, have good intentions for our children, but what we have to remember is that good intentions alone, they are not enough. I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. I appreciate it personally, but I also love the fact that you care about being the dad your children need you to be, and so you tune into the podcast. But while I have you, I want to ask you something. I would like you to consider becoming a monthly supporter of Fathering Our Future. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe it's just $5 a month. For you, that's a cup of coffee. But for another dad, that's a resource, a benefit, or a blessing. So ask yourself if you're able to do that, and then respond. Again, it can be as small as $5 a month. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm done. I'm not going to push the envelope. There's a link at the bottom of the description. You can click that and you can go to the support page, and then you can make your contribution there. Again, thank you. I'm super excited to let you know about my most recent project, a devotional for dads called Following Our Father. As Christian dads, we have no better example than our Father in heaven on how to be a dad. As a father reading the scriptures, I cannot help but see how he truly is our Father. So in this devotional, I go through 30 qualities and attributes of God. You can take it one day at a time and knock it out in a month, or you can take the time that you need to absorb who our Father is so that you can be the dad that you're called to be and be the dad that your children need you to be. This is available to you. You can check the description to find the link to get your copy. You can even get a copy for someone else. But this is a resource for you that will bless you. It will impact you as a father, and it will impact your home. So get your copy of Following Our Father. Get it today. Let's go ahead and start with our scripture for this week. It's something that I reference periodically on this podcast. It's Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse number 23. This is how it reads. It says, "O Lord, I know the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man who walks to direct his own steps." It's not in man who walks to direct his own steps. Now, growing up as a Christian, I've heard this verse before, and this verse was always used in the context of God is the one who's going to order your steps. And I think that's accurate. God is the one who orders the steps. God is the one who directs the path. If you leave your life in your own hands, you're probably going to guide yourself through some pretty awful things, and you're not going to be able to get yourself out of those things. But if you will let go, be still in the chaos, and trust God with your life, that is the best possible outcome for you. If you will just let go of the wheel, if I can steal this analogy, Jesus, take the wheel. If you'll let go of the wheel and you'll allow God to drive your life, you'll go the way that you're supposed to go. But when I became a father, this started to hit a little differently, because then I got to the place where I realized if it's not even in myself to direct my own steps, if I lack the capacity and ability to guide myself, to direct my own path, then how in the world can I ever think that it is within me to direct and order the very steps of my own children? If I can't do it for myself, I certainly can't do it for somebody else. And so this becomes something that I've had to wrestle with and something that I've had to really think about and realize that God is trusting me to be a steward of these children, to raise them up as disciples because they're gifts from Him that I've been entrusted and blessed to be a part of. So, what I can't do as a father is be a dictator to my children. That's not who I'm supposed to be. Even if I knew everything and had all knowledge, I shouldn't be a dictator to my children because God is not a dictator to me. God knows everything. God lays out the best possible way for me to live my life, and I get the choice. Do I want to follow what His Word tells me, or do I want to do it my way? God, knowing everything, end from beginning, still gives us choice. He still allows us to fail. He does not dictate everything to us. So as a father who is imperfect and who is broken and who lacks a lot of knowledge, it is certainly not in me to direct the steps and define the path of my children. And so what I say on this podcast and what I claim for myself is that it's our responsibility not to direct and to define their path, but to point them in a good direction, to point them to God, to guide them to God the best that we can, to be a disciple, raising up other disciples, and to get them to God. And God will be the one who orders the steps, who defines the path, who takes them the way that only He can. And it's my responsibility as a dad to understand that and then to trust that God will do what He has been faithful to do from the beginning. But one of the things that we tend to do as fathers is we think back on our life and our experiences, and then we lead with good intention. We deem our intentions as good. And I think genuinely, deep down in our hearts, we mean well. But I think if genuinely we would look deep down into our hearts, we would see something else that's probably not as good as we think that it is. I think what we'll find is selfishness. Because this is how this typically plays out. Here's the classic scenario. You are athletic as a young man. You do well in whatever sport of choice you enjoyed playing. You go and you play in college. You have an opportunity to go pro. Something happens. You miss it or you get injured. You're so close, but you just don't make the cut. So living with this regret of, I just wish I could have made it. I wish I would have done this. My life would have looked a whole lot different. Now you're sitting here with regret. You're sitting here with knowledge of whatever the sport was. And then you have a kid. And now you have an opportunity to live vicariously through them and to help them become what you were not. And I think the intent there to see your child exceed you, I think that's a good intent. But when it comes to dictating the life, I think this is where we mess up. And so what you do as the almost pro athlete is you raise up your child to be that pro athlete. The problem is you never consider the child. You consider yourself. You consider your experience. You consider your past and your regrets. And you think to yourself, I can help my child live a life that I never got to live. I can help them have money that I never got to have. I can help them go wherever I was not able to go. The problem is you never actually ask the child and get close enough to the child to know, do they even want to go to those places? Do they want to live the lifestyle that I desired to live? Do they want to have the money that I wanted to have? Maybe your child does not want to be responsible for managing hundreds of millions of dollars. Lord knows that I do, but maybe your child does not. Maybe your child wants a simpler life. Maybe they want enough to not have to worry about things, but they don't want to have so much responsibility financially that they just have to keep contending with. They just want it just enough so they can give and live and just be happy. They might not want the 20,000 square foot mansion, this huge estate. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they don't want all the luxury vehicles. Maybe they don't want to eat at the finest restaurants. I don't care how much money I end up with in this life. I can promise you one thing. I will always like ramen noodles in the package that cost a few cents. And I will always like Taco Bell. It doesn't matter how wealthy I become. I will probably always come to a point where I crave that, and I will go with whatever I have in my pocket, and I will buy whatever I want to buy from Taco Bell. That's I just love it. It's probably not great for me, but that's my poison of choice. But the problem with trying to define the path of our children is we never actually take the time to ask them what they want, to get to know them enough to know what they want. I have a son who's artistic, and I'll tell you what, I like basketball. Basketball is something I wish I could have really gone further in. I wish I could have practiced more. I wish I could have gotten more help. I love the sport of basketball. And I know my son's going to be ginormous. I'm right at 6 foot, but my father is 6'2", 6'3". I have a couple of short people on my side of the family. And on my wife's side of the family, the men start at 6'5". So I'm pretty confident that my son's going to grow up to be quite the whopper. And I'm thinking, I can instill some ability and some skill in him right now. But you know what? I've tried. And my son, he likes doing that. He likes being competitive. But what he really likes is to draw. What he really likes is to build. In fact, we got him for his birthday. We recommended it to my parents and to my sister. And what they got for him was a Mona Lisa Lego set, because he is artistic and he likes art and he likes to build with Legos. And he got the best of both worlds. And he likes that the box said you have to be 18 or older. That's what the recommendation. And I told him, I said, buddy, there's not a lot of 8-year-olds who are going to enjoy the Mona Lisa as a Lego set. I said, you happen to like art and Legos. So for you, this is perfect. But for most, you got to be a little bit older to actually appreciate it. But that's my son. If he doesn't want to grow up and be the athlete, I'm not going to force him to be the athlete because I enjoyed it as a kid. So the point is, while you have a lifestyle that you have lived and you have experience that you have gained and you have wisdom in a particular area, and you can think back over your own life and you can see where you could have done it better, you have lived your life. You were a teenager. You were a child. You were in college. Your time has passed. You do not get to go back and relive your life through your children. And if you do, you're robbing your children of their life, and you're also taking away a fundamental, foundational piece of relationship, and that's trust. Because you're not trusting your child. You're taking away their ability to confide in you and say, Dad, I really like this. I would really like help getting better at this. You're not even allowing that conversation to take place. And they're going to grow up thinking, I never got to express myself to my father. I never got to tell my dad what I enjoyed, what I liked. And without that basis of trust, you have nothing to build on. You will never have a strong relationship with your child because you never trusted them. You never allowed them to feel trusted by you. So good intentions fail. Good intentions alone are not good enough. I know you might mean well, but if you will dig down to the heart of the issue, you will find that the inspiration behind your good intentions is selfishness. So here's the remedy. Here's how we fix or make better our good intentions. And this is something that I want us to focus on. The new year, this release date, I believe, is December the 30th of 2024. We're approaching 2025. Maybe you're listening to this in 2025 already. I want the focus for us as fathers to be the remedy to just plain old good intentions. And that is preparation, proactiveness. This is what I want us to focus on as fathers. This is something that I'm going to be focusing on as a father, because I'm getting ready to have the talk with my son. He's 8 years old, and that day is quickly approaching. This is the recommended age to start having this conversation. And the reason I'm preparing for this is because I want to be able to be proactive and not reactive. I don't want him to come home from school and say, "Hey, Dad, I heard this today," or not come home from school and share anything because he's intimidated, or he thinks he has it figured out, or he's heard it and he doesn't even question it. He just, "Oh, my friend said this is the way that it is. This is the way that it is. I'll just run with it." I don't want that to be the case. I know what that turns into because I did not get the talk as a kid. So I know what can happen not having that clarity, not having that information delivered to you by a parent. I know what happens. I don't want that for my son. So in order to do this the right way, with his best intention in mind, I have to prepare. I have to get to a place where I understand how to have this conversation, how to have this series of conversations. I need to get to a place where I can answer questions. This is a beautiful takeaway that I got from Dr. William Lane Craig, renowned Christian apologist. I was happy to have him on the podcast a year or two ago. But he ended the episode by sharing something that his professor shared with him, and that was, you have to know your subject deeply and share it simply. If we're going to be the dads that our children need us to be, when it comes time for us to help them, one, we need to be ready. We need to have already prepared for that time, but we need to have truly prepared. We really need to know what we're getting ready to do, what we're getting ready to discuss and talk about, so that we can break it down for them in a way that is digestible for them, in a way that they can understand. We have to put in the work beyond our experience and the contextual wisdom and knowledge that we have gained through our individual life. We have to put in the work to research and to study and to grow and to learn so that we can know and understand the subject deeply and then be able to share it simply with our children. So the remedy for good intention is preparation, and it requires a twofold knowledge. You have to have a knowledge of the subject, but you also have to have a knowledge of your child. And this is why relationship is at the heart of everything that we are doing as fathers. Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap, Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. And this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is, if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. If you are not focusing on your relationship with your children, you're going to have a hard time with all the other stuff. And I think that this is modeled to us by God. You read the Bible, and what do you see? What sticks out? That God is trying to have a relationship with us, his children. It is about relationship. God wants us close to him. That's what this is about. And so for us as fathers, the same thing applies. We've got to focus on relationship. You actually have to know your children. And you do this through communication. You do this through personal integrity, being someone that your children actually want to have a relationship with. You maintain this relationship with grace. There's going to be plenty of times that your kids aggravate you, frustrate you, make you mad, let you down, and just make you want to walk away from them. Grace says, you might have done me dirty, but I'm going to extend favor because my relationship with you is way more important than my personal feelings about what just happened. That's what grace is going to do. Grace is going to allow longevity to take place in your relationship. And the most important is your faith in Jesus Christ. As you grow in your relationship as a disciple of Christ, this is going to help you and teach you how to have better communication with your kids, extend grace in a greater capacity, and then be a person of strong integrity so that your children desire to be in a relationship with you. This is one thing that we often fail at. We think that we merit a relationship with our children simply because they are our children, that they must trust us because we're just their dad, that they must honor us because we're just their dad, that they must respect us because we're just their dad. And that's not how we go about this with anyone else. If we want respect, we earn it. If we want to be honored, we do something worthy of honor. We have to be the same way, and that much more when it comes to our children. We have to have this intimate knowledge of our children so that we can actually help them. You have to know where your kid is at. You have to be able to see their trajectory. And then you have to be able to prepare for that. So take, for example, my conversation with my son that's up and coming. I'm already preparing for this because I want this conversation to go the best that it possibly can. Am I going to mess up? I might. There's a good chance. But I'm putting in the work now. And I'm not just going to go based off of what I have experienced and what I have learned. Could I do that? Yeah. And I could still have the talk. And maybe that's better than nothing, but maybe it's not. Who's to say that if you go about the talk in a way that's not actually good, that you get a good benefit and result from that? I don't know. I don't know that it's just right for me to say, hey, kiddo, this is how babies are made. This is what you have down there. This is what girls have. Some things will change. When you get married, you can figure the rest out. What benefit really comes from having a conversation like that? In my mind, not a whole lot. So I want to have a good conversation with my son. So what am I going to do? Knowing that he's not quite there yet, I have some time. I'm going to take that time and I'm going to plan and I'm going to prepare and I'm going to become knowledgeable on how to have this conversation. It's not that I need to know more about the topic. I have 4 kids, for goodness sake. I know a thing or two about the topic and the subject at hand, but there's still probably some things that I can learn. But the most important thing for me is how to communicate this, how to talk about this, how to structure this conversation so that it is beneficial for my child. This is the work that I have got to put in, and I have to plan and I have to prepare for this. I'm not going to be reactive. I want to be proactive, and I want you to do the same. Let me tell you this little story, maybe to make this simpler and to drive it home. In planning for this episode today, I live about 45 minutes away from the church, which is where I have been recording episodes. My parents live across the street from the church, which is very convenient. So I was going to drop the baby and my next daughter, JoJo, off at my mother's house so she could watch them while I came over here and got some work done. And I'm on the way, and then it dawns on me, I did not grab milk for the baby because my wife nurses her, she pumps, and then that's what the baby has to eat. So I have to bring a little lunchbox with a freezer pack and milk inside of it so that my mother can then thaw it, put it in the bottle, and then feed the baby. And I am 7 minutes away from my mother's house, and I realize I did not grab the milk. So I dropped JoJo off because she would have been devastated and cried the entire way home if I didn't. I drop her off. I go back, drive another 45 minutes back to my house, grab the stuff, another 45 minutes back, drop the baby off, and I'm thinking, I have lost an hour and a half of time. I'm not going to get near as much as I wanted to get done. This really sucks. But that's kind of what happens when you don't prepare. And then I had a whole list of things scheduled out for today. And then it's now I'm reacting to everything because I did not prepare. I was not proactive, so now I have to be reactive. And on a very small scale, this is how this manifests itself. What I could have done is on our little whiteboard, made a little checklist. Make sure you grab these things before you leave. I could have done that. I could have put my stuff together a little bit better so that there was less for me to think about, and maybe I had more capacity to think about, do I have everything that I need? I could have done some things differently, and then this morning would not have been as hectic and as crazy as it turned out to be. So now things have changed. There are things that I wanted to do that I can no longer do. And this whole morning is about, how do I best react to the mistake that I have made? Now, what I am not going to do is get mad that the baby is nursed or that the baby can't eat whole foods yet and say that it's the baby's fault that I have to go and do this. Sometimes, as parents, it's easy to do that. It's easy to point the finger at the kid and say, if you were just an adult, this wouldn't be a problem. If you were just independent, this wouldn't be a problem. If you could just do all these things that I wish you could do by the time you were born, this wouldn't be a problem. Well, that's really idiotic of us to think. How am I going to point the finger at a baby and I'm a grown man? Like, think about that, and then you'll probably stop doing that because you'll realize how awful that makes you look. So I can't point the finger at other people. I have to point it back to myself because I could have prepared better, and then everything would have changed. Now, when you put this on a much larger scale as a father with your children, you have an enemy, and that is time. If you were not siding with time and preparing and being proactive, then time becomes a nightmare. Because the problem is when you have to be reactive with your children, there's things that have to be undone. And now you're having to work backwards while still trying to maintain this forward progress of, I'm preparing to be able to help here. And you are going to pull yourself apart and drive yourself mad because you are trying to be both proactive and reactive at the same time. You can't go two directions at once. You have to determine which way you're going to go. My encouragement and motivation to you today, this week, and for this year, as a focus for this year, but for the rest of your life as a father, is that you choose the direction that is proactive, that is forward thinking. You know your kid's going to have to drive at some point. Maybe they're 12, 13 years old. You should probably start thinking, how are we going to go about getting them a car? How are we going to go about doing the training? Who am I going to allow the child to train with? Is it just going to be me? How am I going to manage my time? You should contemplate those things. At least think about it. See if there's other alternatives, because the reality is things have likely changed since you were learning how to drive. There's a big gap there, and things develop and change over time. So you should remember that. Don't just say, oh, well, this is how it was when I was a kid. We'll do it the same way. Nope, because you might put in all this work, and guess what? It doesn't work anymore. The state doesn't allow it. They have a different way. Figure this stuff out. I'm getting ready to have a talk with my son. Yeah, I know a little bit about the birds and the bees, but I've never had the conversation before. I've got some work that I've got to do. Your kid's getting ready to go to high school. Think about it. How do you prepare them? Are there things that you can help them with now? If they wrestle with insecurities, what can you do as their father to help build their confidence? Because guess what? When kids go to high school, there are some really jerk kids. That's just the way that it is. It doesn't matter if they have good parents or bad parents. Kids turn out to be jerks. My parents did a really good job with me, but man, there was a time in my life that I was a punk because I liked when people laughed, and I would use anyone that I could to get a laugh. That's just the way that it was. Your kids are going to get into high school, and there's probably going to be some confrontations. What are you doing right now in observing who they are to help them in a way that's actually going to be a benefit to them? You have to stop living vicariously through your children. You have to understand that your time is past for whatever it was that you wanted to do. Doesn't mean you still can't be successful. You can be the Colonel Sanders at 65 and start KFC if you want to. Your time is not gone, but that time is in the past, and your child's time is now. So what you have to do is understand that you have to have a close relationship with them so that you understand who they are, what they love, what they like, what they long to do. You have to have knowledge of the road ahead of them, and you have to give them guidance along the way, not dictate the path, guide them on the path. And all along the way, you're pointing them to God. Because the moment they step out of your house and they become completely independent, you're not there to point the way, but God always will be. So in 2025, let's make this the emphasis. Let's get away from just good intention. Let's get away from saying, well, this is the way that it was when I was growing up. I've got a t-shirt for this in my closet because I've done it so many times. Let's get away from that, because we use that as a cop-out and an excuse to actually put in the work that we need to put in as their father, to be the dad that they need us to be, and to help them and to bless them and to benefit them. This is no longer about us. It is about them. So let's put the emphasis on them. Let's draw closer to our children. Let's further develop our relationships. And let's look down the trajectory of their life and find these points where we know they're going to need some help, where we know they're going to need guidance. And let's help them. If you know your kid is getting ready to graduate high school and go off to college, have you ever taken the time to teach them about money and managing their resources? If not, now's the time, because it was the time when they were a little kid. Wherever you're at, think about it and think, how do I remedy anything that I have maybe dropped the ball on? But how do I become more focused on my child's future? In 2025, this needs to be our focus, and this needs to be our emphasis. We mean well, but we're not doing well with just good intentions. And I want us to do well, and we will do well if we prepare, if we're proactive, if we have a knowledge of what we need to help with, and most importantly, if we have a knowledge and a relationship with our children. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you for your word that gives us guidance and instruction, that points us toward you and toward your way. Lord, I pray that you would help us as fathers to cast pride and ego aside, that we would get to a place where we understand there's still more for us to learn. Maybe not necessarily solely for ourselves, but certainly for our children. God, help us to grow. Help us to prioritize fatherhood and learning as fathers so that we can bless our children, so that we can be the dads that they need us to be. God, give us wisdom in this journey, wisdom to see the trajectory of our children's lives, wisdom to make time to prepare, to help them along the way. God, help us to never get to a place where we feel like the dictator of our child's life. We understand that if anyone has the right to do that, it is you, and still you do not do it. So God, help us to just be a disciple, raising up other disciples, pointing them to you, doing our best to get our children to turn and to see the one who sits on the throne at the center of it all. Help us on this journey. In Jesus' name, amen. I want this to be the focus. I want us to be forward-thinking fathers. I want us to be concerned about the future of our children. There's a lot of big things that come up in life. There are things that you have yet to experience in this life. And these things that you're getting ready to experience as a man, as a husband, and as a father, these are things that you can make note of now and learn from and pass on to your kids. But remember, everything that you have learned in life, it's not always going to be relevant to your children. Maybe you were great. Maybe you were almost pro. But maybe they don't care. Maybe they don't care to be a pro themselves. Maybe they'll play with you because that's what they got to do with dad. But maybe they don't want to play for millions. But think about how special that is. They'll play for you. They don't care to play for everybody else. Because it's not about the money. Because you know what your kids want more than anything else? They just want you. They want that relationship. So let's be proactive and let's focus on preparation as fathers. If along the way you need any help, I'm always here for you. fatheringourfuture@gmail.com. And be committed to this because you are a difference maker. You're a dynasty builder. You're a dad. You're not expendable. You're irreplaceable. The world needs you. Your children, they need you so much more than you could fathom. So stay with it, stay committed, and strive to be the dad that your children need you to be. Thank you so much for being with me. This is Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you'll join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen and consider leaving a nice review because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital and they are essential and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home, but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment, but by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.